Call to order the February 16th, 2021 meeting of Ag and Rural Affairs. The first item on the agenda is approval of minutes of the November 17th meeting. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes for 17th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Quick question, do we have any members of the committee that are online today rather than here in person? No?
No, sir, I don't believe so.
Okay. Next item is public appearances for non-agenda items. Anyone who would like to speak on an item that is not on the agenda, I've got Tom Clowder.
You want to?
Jeff, I think is for an agenda item.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Tom Clotter, 2583 Norwood Street. I'm the alder for District 4, but I've come before you just to give you some information and hope that you'll use it, and if you don't want any of it, that's okay too. I have no problem with that. Just some little history, and then I have like five items I wanted to share with you. And the reason I came tonight is because I was concerned about the next meeting, if you have, or just the opposite. The next meeting next month you may not have, and I leave in April, I might miss you. And you know, I don't want to miss you guys, so I had to come tonight.
You can come back anytime, Tom.
Come back and at least talk to you. And I've got some complaints too, I'll tell the city council in due time, but it's so hard to hear through these microphones and people in the public. You may want to do what you want to do with the mask. I've had the shot, I've had them both, so if you see me dropping this, it's okay. But here we go. You know, I just want to give you a little history, and I just want to let you know that I've got a lot of people to thank, but from wearing a badge to being on the city council and being mayor, it's 37 years I donated to this city. 37. And the committee we're on right now, when I was mayor, I brought it back because other mayors didn't feel it was necessary. I think it's so necessary. It's so important. And every one of you are so important. Now going to my topics, I would hope that I know because of COVID, and Randy didn't have the experience because of COVID with it, but I sure hope in the fall you continue to do the meetings with the rural area. Go to the farm, have the meeting in the farm. They're not coming here. They like to see you in the rural area. They like to see you out there, and they'll come. It's almost like the Field of Dreams, isn't it? If you have it there, they'll come. It's not a baseball game, but I can tell you they'll come. And don't stop doing that. Okay? The next thing, again, you don't have to agree with me, but take it for what it's worth. Mike Zimmerman should be coming to these meetings once a year to fill you guys in, and gals, of what's going on in the city. It's really not up to the alder. Mike's out there. He's got his ear in the ground. You all should know what's going on. And a lot of time, maybe the alder won't remember. I know when I was on them, sometimes you just don't remember. Put it on Mike Zimmerman's shoulders. Have him come and tell you what's going on in the city. I think there's a big lack there. The O'Brien Farm, I'm real proud of. I think that for the committee, and you guys, you all supported it. Randy supported it. I supported it. I support it still big time. That solar farm, I think, is neat. I think you should know I did talk to the O'Briens, and this spring, Tom O'Brien's farm, it's gonna, the switch will be pulled this spring. So that will be up and running. Pat O'Brien, the one you see on Lacey Road as you go down, it's on your left, it's on the south side of the road. That'll probably be this fall. They'll kick that off this fall. And I was a big proponent of that, not only because of what it does for the city, but it's also a great educational tool. We have school right next door, and that school should go over there on field trips and know what's going on with solar. Not to mention, it's on these buildings. I'm not going to go through everything, so don't misunderstand. I only got about 3 things left, and that's it. But the Lacey Seminole Forest, the Lacey and Seminole intersection, it's got to get done. That's my answer. It's got to get done. May it be a roundabout. May it be a stop and go light. Randy was real good with helping me to get it moved up. And we had an alder that wanted to get rid of it in the budget. And we said, absolutely not. And it is going to come in the next few years. I think I'll just put it that way. I know Randy's on it. I know he is. But that's real important to the city and the traffic flow in this city. You'll notice a lot of this stuff is in District 4. District 4 is the biggest district in the city. District 4's got the most going on. Now, other alders probably wouldn't agree with that, but I will say it. District 4's got the most land. District 4 is where it's at. One of my last topics is a voice. You guys and you gals, darn it, you got to come to that city council and tell them when something's wrong. Let me give you an example. I failed on it too. I'm not pointing my fingers at you all. I failed on it too. But I was quite vocal about it. I still am. And it had to do with the reassessments. Was that out of whack? And no one knew. $40,000 I went up. $40,000 I went up on my taxes. And asked me if I'm happy. And it was like, just pay it. Just pay it, Tom, because we can't do anything about it. Really? It killed the rural area. Something like that issue comes up again. I expect every one of you to go to the city council and raise the hell. Go and raise heck. Go and do it. Show up. I can only remember Mark Jones being there, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But you've got to come and say, look, we don't need that. We don't need this kind of increase with nobody knowing. I think the way it was handled, and I'll let it lie, I won't say another word about it, the way it was handled was terrible. I had more rural area people call me about that than I almost did with the smoking ban, if you know what I'm talking about. And when that came about in this city, there was this room filled and the next room and the next room. The people wanted to have a smoking ban in the city. And the state overruled it. So when you get a topic, please just come. Just show up. come and tell these alders, put pressure on them. We only have 2 alders for District 4, but you can certainly talk to the others. And one of the last things I want to tell you is kind of twofold. The town of Madison coming to Fitchburg is going to be tough. It's going to be real tough. 15 employees, let's say 10. Where's the money coming from? It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough on the next council. But I had to tell you something. The pet projects we can't afford. You don't have to agree with me. It's fine. But I'm one that stands on my own 2 feet. We have an alder right now that wants to put 2 teen centers. 2 teen centers in the city? We can't afford 1. And let me tell you a little something about this stuff, how it goes. When I started the library, we had a friends group, it was called. And we raised money, and it took years, like 3 years off the top of my head, to raise money for that library. And it took a lot of sweat, it took a lot of meetings, it took a lot of hard work. In the last budget, we had an alder that wanted to buy a building and then study it for the next 2 years. Okay, I didn't vote for it. We can't afford it. The pet peeve projects for these alders, and I'll tell them probably when I leave, shouldn't be. Shouldn't be. We can't do it. The retirees, you're putting them right out of their home. The last thing I want to tell you is you probably, and the next alders in the future can maybe bring it to the city council, but you should probably have somebody from the town of Madison on this committee. Somebody with history in the town of Madison that can bring to this committee to help you all when we get the town of Madison, to help you out. Most of you know it. We've got a lot of history here, but I don't think it would hurt to bring another employee. We've got some alders that want to increase meetings. Okay. But what we need here is maybe somebody from the town with some history on this committee. Food for thought. I just wanted to pass it on to you. Thanks for your work. Thanks for being here. Take what you want, but what I just told you is dear to my heart. If you don't listen to all of it, that's okay with me. Listen to some of it. I wanted to tell you before I leave, because I may not see you again. And I even remember going back on the city council, and I'd ask, did Ag and Rural Affairs see it? Well, no. Well, why? Well, let's bring it back to them, because I think it's important. So with that said, I want to say thanks, but those are just some thoughts I had I wanted to share with you. And thanks for all your help. And you know what? Keep up the good work. We'll see you around.
Tom, thank you for your years of service. 37 years is a long time. A lot of that here on this committee at Ag and Rural, and a lot of it representing District 4, the rural area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, seeing no one else to speak on a non-agenda item, we've got agenda review.
I'd like to make a motion to change the sequence of the agenda. I'd like to have us agree to bring up Jeremy Crosby, number 1 on the agenda from here on, so that he can get his discussion about the broadband going for us.
So the motion is to move item 5C ahead of items 5A and B.
That's correct.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Jeremy, floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to start by attempting to share my screen, if Scott will let me do that.
Go ahead.
All right, everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Jeremy Crosby. I'm the Community Media Services Manager for Fact TV. Roger had come out and talked with me a couple of times about broadband in the city of Fitchburg. And after a couple of conversations and talking with Randy the other day, we determined that maybe I should come in and say a few words to you. So that's how I ended up being here with you today. I am not an expert in this area completely, so I'm not saying I am. I did some research for economic development, Mike and Joyce, a while back. So I had put some materials together, attended a meeting with them with the state. And so I will do my best to answer as many questions as I can, but basically we'll be talking about broadband here in the city, and Roger and or Randy can jump in at any time as they see fit here. So let's get into it. As far as what we're discussing today, I have put this together in a way to kind of break down some terminology related to broadband, what's the infrastructure look like, taking a look at the federal, state, and local aspects of who's governing broadband, speeds and testing, city broadband assessment, which is very important for you guys. This whole presentation hopefully will be beneficial, but that area I know has the interest there. Providers here in the city of Fitchburg, the Broadband Grant, and then the future of broadband. So in the definition area here, as we look at it, I'm not going to necessarily go through all of these. I will just point out a couple that are going to be referenced today again and again. Mbps, or megabytes per second, is how we gauge internet speed, and that's going to come up a lot today when I refer to some of the speeds. So that is the breakdown on that page. On this page, you might see ping come up, the testing that determines how far away the closest server is when we're doing or loading our internet. So I'll cross that coming up. Upload speeds, download speeds, also very important. They are two different things, and they definitely mean something to people who purchase internet. And then cable, dial-up, DSL, all things that are thrown out there, and all things that we've all had to go through with buying internet, being dial-up internet, kind of being the first wave that I remember anyways for internet. But DSL coming from a lot of the telephone companies was a slower internet at the time, a lot faster now. Cable internet, we have a lot of cable infrastructure here in the city of Fitchburg, which you'll see coming up. So something to pay attention to. Also satellite, and that will make my friend Scott Yarbrough in the chambers very happy when we talk about satellite a little bit later, because he has had some interest in it. So let's talk about infrastructure. What do we know that's out there and currently available to the residents? Well, this picture kind of summed it up when I was doing some of the research, trying to find and best way to tell you guys what do we have for infrastructure in the city of Fitchburg. I mean, this is it. We have a lot of cable on power lines and underground available for residents to pick up that signal. mobile broadband, huge developments in that area. You'll hear about 5G a little bit later in the presentation today, but definitely a huge piece. The fixed wireless service that's provided between towers using radio waves. You kind of see that stuff, more cell phone broadband on our water towers across Wisconsin, but those are available. Satellite, probably really popular in the rural area. Maybe not popular on the speed, but something that was made rural. Also, DSL was a big rural area piece as well. So something that you also see fiber on this chart. Fiber is being laid in a lot of areas, and hopefully I'll be able to explain that. And Randy can jump in here. Randy's got some experience in this as well. But fiber, while being a good transfer of internet, doesn't mean that it's necessarily getting into our houses. But we'll get there. Just a different way of looking at this as far as a cable company goes. Again, the majority of the city has access to cable internet. And what I mean by that is it's coming off of some type of service provider, either underground or above ground. And it's coming in via into your homes via router, whatever the case may be, a coax line that comes into your home, whether it's underground or above. A lot more underground work happening these days than above ground. But to kind of give you an idea, when your internet goes down, and that's what this is referencing, there are a lot of points that are that happen between your home and you getting internet, and that can go all the way back to wherever the servers are buried in the somewhere in the Midwest to local service provider areas, hubs, if you will, to power lines being knocked down. I mean, we're hearing a lot about the power outages in Texas and those areas. If they don't have power, they most likely don't have internet, at least via cable. So something to keep in mind. And again, we're seeing a lot of digging underground. And as I think of when that's being laid down, it's you ever see orange, that usually represents broadband or whatever outside protector that's being laid in the ground before they lay the fiber or whatever else they're using for cable and the infrastructure. So how's the internet travel to our homes? Again, I'm going to pick on the cable companies today because that's the most that I've had to deal with. But people like telephone companies bring it in sort of similar, basically coming off either a power line or underground. That's being brought in generally by a coax cable through the ground to our homes. And then once it reaches our homes, sometimes it's hits and put on splitters. I know when I moved into my home, I'm up in the DeForest area, I found 3 splitters that a satellite company and 2 cable companies had put in that was splitting my signals many different ways, which turned out they were, I was having slow internet, and that was the reason why. I also got to see last summer, there was road construction in front of my house, and they were nice enough to splice our cables, so we lost internet, and seeing them come out and go through the motions, I watched them 2 times come and dig up my lawn and lay some coax cable in. So that's a pretty common practice for bringing our internet into our homes. And it's something I want to point out, something that we had a pretty good discussion about when we were talking, Randy and Roger and I, recently about how this stuff gets in the homes. I did put a call into AT&T, and I did not hear back from them. We have a contact apparently from the city that I was hoping to talk to see, how much does it cost to get fiber laid into your house? Fiber being a faster way of passing internet data. Coax is a slower cable. It goes back a long ways. But it can only house so much data, where fiber is done in many different pairs and can pass high-speed data. And that's what you're kind of seeing here once it gets in the homes. And then just one more look here into the home. Once it gets in, you're hooking it up you're connecting, a coax cable to some type of modem, and then you're either hooking that up to a router so you have wireless internet throughout your homes, or maybe you do run some cables to specific areas. I know my home, where it comes in, I have a tri-level, so I take a hard line right to a Roku box, and that's how we watch our TV in one area. The rest of the house, we use Wi-Fi. But that varies in speeds. So when we're talking about speeds and how happy people are with companies, all of those things, sometimes the problems are at the homeowner's house. The infrastructure that was laid there, you split your cable, 20 different ways. You used to be able to do that where you didn't need a box at every TV. That signal, if you chop it and keep splitting it, you're killing the data. You want the most direct route, once it hits the modem. And then as far as the internet goes, you want to make sure that you have a router that is up to date, and certainly local companies can help you deal with that. Just looking again at one more here, some common things you might see out there. Again, this is really pushing the limit for me on my knowledge, but did want to point out that we're seeing mostly, especially with the new development, you're never seeing above ground utilities anymore. It's all underground. And that's how cable or internet is run into these neighborhoods. And sometimes they come in by fiber into the neighborhoods, and then they might hit some type of hub and then split. I don't know that infrastructure very well, but something to point out. I'm showing you all of this because when we talk about the future, is it going to be the in-ground future or is it going to be the mobile future? That's the big fight. So it's important to share what we have in the ground and know how it's getting to our homes. So who's the folks that look over this stuff? Randy can tell you, and I can tell you, we've seen a lot of power stripped away from local, state, government, and federal when it comes to cable companies and this technology. We'll save that discussion for another day. But basically, the FCC is the ones that are looking over, and you can even send them complaints about your internet. They are the ones that are working at the federal level to make sure that technology is going in. And again, I'm going to save any opinions I have for them. It's a lot of craziness up there, and it definitely swings one way or the other as it comes to decisions for what's good, what's bad, and if there's too many people in dealing with building the future structure, if you will. I did want to point this out, that this is some recent information, and we're hearing a lot about this, and I think it's something you want to keep in the back of your minds, that there's no question that internet in rural areas is a huge topic right now, and making sure that everybody across the U.S. has access to broadband. So each administration that comes in is definitely full throttle on trying to get internet out to everybody. And we're seeing that driven even with the Biden administration. And now we'll see who gets in the seats for the FCC. But, this is coming right off of new plans here to make sure that Americans do have access to high speed, fixed service, especially in the rural areas moving forward. So, and we're seeing that. We're seeing a lot of expansion of that in the rural area. Maybe not locally, but or locally to us here in Fitchburg, but in the state of Wisconsin. Looking nationwide, this is fixed broadband development across the U.S. You're looking at it, and it doesn't look too bad. It definitely gets a little bit tougher as you head out west, but we'll look at a closer map a little bit later in this. But internet's out there, and those speeds will only continue to get better and better day by day because of the development of internet and bringing those lines to everybody. Here in the state, that's controlled by the PSC, and they overlook all of our utilities in here, but definitely in our telecommunication broadband services, this is the area that they're ensuring that they're representing you and our telecommunicated broadband services. So we're talking about who really has control on the state level and locally. It's really the PSC here in the state. And they have some great maps out there that we're going to take a look at, showing you where the expansion is. And more importantly, we'll talk about this later, but they also are the ones that work with the broadband expansion grants. This is helping getting money with kind of a partnership, if you will, with the broadband companies, and then either city or I've seen, local towns come together to try to work together to get in infrastructure. We'll take a look at this in a little bit. There's a full section in this area because this was one of the targets that when I originally started looking at broadband, this is why I was brought in as part of the group, because we were looking at could we do this in Fitchburg, and at that time it was pretty difficult, and we'll share why here coming up. And then looking at the local area here, what I've learned within the last week is the city of Fitchburg, this is really out of our control. It's really up to the developers, businesses, residents who want internet. They need to reach out to said providers and decide what they want to bring in their houses. Developers, at the very beginning, and talking to Tracy Foss a little bit about this, and if I get it wrong, you can call her and get the right answer or the right direction here. But basically, when developers decide, that they're going to put in something as part of a checklist at the beginning, they're encouraged to call those broadband or telecommunication companies and decide who they want to bring in. So they may choose to take a charter because it's available there, and charter will lay all the lines in. Let's say maybe it's fiber, maybe it's whatever they lay in there. Once it's all said and done, and I believe becomes whatever that it becomes the city piece of it, and it becomes a public right of way, then any company can use those lines that are laid eventually. So kind of interesting that an AT&T could go and lay in lines into a specific area, and then eventually it becomes a public right of way, and then anybody can tap into that area if they've got the access out there. If I'm saying that right, hopefully I got that right, and if I don't, I will find the right answer for you. So Public Works, just make sure to work with those developers again on infrastructure when it comes into the city, whether again it's a business, but really, you as a resident, you're picking what you want as far as what type of internet and what's available at your location. Most of the time when you're checking into these things, you're putting in a zip code, your address and a zip code to see what's available. And you can do that on the web. I'm going to point this out, and I'm going to let Wade jump in if he has anything to say. I asked him, did we put anything in the comp plan when we were looking ahead here for broadband and infrastructure? And there were a couple of areas that did have some information in there. And Wade, I took the area that we kind of talked about. There's no binding, or there's
Right.
nothing binding at this point as far as it's good. It's planning.
Yeah, and I think those statements that you're referencing are, they're should statements. So really, to the degree the city can move on these sorts of things, we should explore those. But, as a planner that wrote some of these policies, nothing in these policies would obligate the city to move forward with rural broadband, but more of a, advisory and move things as opportunities arise.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that, we know that broadband is a utility that is needed. And, as these neighborhoods and stuff go in my opinion, those telecommunication companies are going to be there and want to expand on that. It's just, again, up to right now, as it stands, up to the developers or the business owners or whatever. So we'll see how it goes. But did want to throw that in there that at least there was some forward thinking, if you will, on, that it is definitely a needed service. So something you can check out on your own. Speeds and testing. Kind of interesting as I was going through and doing some extra research here just to make sure I was covering all the bases. One of those is, well, what is the national speed that the FCC sets, right? And there's a number. There's a number that they follow. It was set in 2015, and it puts it at a download speed of 25 megabytes per second and an upload speed of 3 megabytes per second. When you're purchasing internet and you're watching the commercials, or you're trying to avoid watching the commercials, whatever the case may be, you're given a speed all the time. They're always talking about 1 gig, 100 megabytes. You're mostly talking about the download, because that's the most we do when it comes to internet. We're receiving. What I'm doing right now in my office is upload, because I'm talking to you. So we're doing this back and forth thing. So if I get a little wavy, it's probably because my upload speed is very slow. I bet you a lot of people, including myself, found out recently with the times we were in that we have slow internet. We didn't know it. But once we started doing our jobs and stuff, it got a little bit tougher because speeds are being manipulated and everything else. If everybody's using, especially in the cable world, sometimes it gets throttled, meaning that they can adjust it and adjust speeds based on the user's use. Randy can correct me on that one, but I at least know in the cable side of things that's going on. So what are you buying here? And I need to somehow uncover myself here, so I can't see this. Well, I can't see the right side of my screen, but I'm just gonna say here that when you're looking at speed, this is what you see from the cable company or from our broadband companies, right? Mostly they show the download speeds. That's what's presented here. You're actually seeing only download speeds. And again, why that's great. I mean, we want to watch Netflix and to watch all of Fact TV. You better be watching Fact TV. We want to make sure that you have enough speed to do that. And there are some set guidelines out there of saying how much speed do you need to watch and do certain things. In my world, for Fact TV, I really want my upload. I mean, I want my download to be fast because I don't want to wait to download stuff. But I upload a lot of videos. I work for a TV station. That's what we do. And sometimes it can take me hours to upload a 4 gig file at 1 to 2 megabytes per second versus my download might be 100. And it's like, well, I can download a 4 gig file and no problem. But when it comes to uploading, it's not the same thing. So something, again, on the education side of things, that I think it's important to point that out when people do pick that out, that they know that's what they're seeing. So they're not necessarily told what type of internet they're actually even purchasing. As you look at this, do you know what you're getting? AT&T provides internet a little bit different than Charter. Charter, again, is that cable provider. They're providing it through the cable. AT&T is providing it through fiber and some through the telephone line. It depends what's out there. Same with Frontier, a different type of company. So something that, to educate people on too, when you're buying internet, not all internet is the same. And that's whether it's the provider or even what you're paying for. So definitely check that fine print when you're out there and check those ups and downs. And I put on the note here because I think it's important too, that people should know what equipment contracts, average speed, services, and Spectrum in their contract. It says that they can up and down your speed without your control. So it's something that they can do, and you accept those terms when you sign a contract. Sure, all the companies have that as an option. Now, looking at speeds and comparing it to kind of what you need to do those things. So I have the national, what the speeds are supposed to be to meet here. So looking at that, we've got the email, web, online surfing suggested speed, 5 to 10 megs. Okay, cool. Email, web surface, surfing and shopping on 3 devices. Well, things kind of increase. You get the point. Not every one is alike here. And if you're looking across the top, we can see the difference between cable, DSL, fiber. All of those things matter when picking internet stuff. Why am I telling you all this? Because we have different types of internet that are only available in certain areas of Fitchburg. So some people have access to really great internet. Some people don't. We know that, and this is why. It's because what the cable provider has, or what that telecommunication company has out there available, they might not be able to provide those great speeds. And I know that's something that we want to learn about. Again, another area here just showing you from FCC, this is their breakdown of it. They have a consumer guide on there on what they assume speed should be based on some of the stuff that you're doing. So, if you got students at home, everybody does right now, they give you kind of their standard average. I would say some of these numbers don't even, I would think they need to be higher, but, that's all open for interpretation there. And then just one more look at that, at a light use, one device, you can probably keep a basic internet, if you keep adding more functions, it's going to take more data, right? If you have a family of 4, I've got a family of 4. Thank God my kids are young, so they don't know technology too much, but my wife and I both do webinar type of things. We eat up the internet big time. So we got to have a lot of, download, and we got to have a lot of upload. And so we can call our internet provider and ask them how much can we get? And, how much is it going to cost? Or should we bring multiple companies' internet into houses? That can be done. And we will take a look at that a little bit later. As I was doing the research, I came across this, and I'm not going to say that I'm going to put my lifeline on exactly that this is the correct numbers, but this is an assessment done by Broadband Now, a website that compares all internet speeds across the United States and even locally. So this is Fitchburg's assessment, if you will, based on this company. Well, I'm looking at Wisconsin here, but hey, look at that. I can move that. That's good. So just looking at Wisconsin's coverage based on this company, we're looking pretty good in Wisconsin, right? So it's looking like things are on the up and up. We've got coverage by county. It kind of shows you, the coverage based on. And Dane County, if you can see, it's way at the bottom there. Broadband coverage is at 96.8%. This will play into why maybe it's going to be difficult for us to get the grant here in Fitchburg and in Dane County. There are a lot of factors to it, but that might be one of them. As we're fortunate that we have pretty good internet here as far as it goes in the city. Looking at internet speed in the top cities here, Madison's number 2 in the state. And offers 27 providers. We don't have 27 providers necessarily. There's a lot of providers here, but you can see it by the numbers. And looking at the speeds based on the providers in the area, and TDS, AT&T, and Charter, those are our 3 providers here in the city. So we're lucky enough to even have providers that provide pretty good average download speeds. So that's their top download speeds. Again, that can change based on as technology gets better and things improve. But this was taken in February. Here was the last time this was updated. So pretty recent numbers here. Just was an interesting assessment. I'm sure there's plenty of companies out there that do these types of assessments on the city. There we go. I want to throw it out there that if you want to test at home, this is the top testing site that I've always used. And I think it's important and something when somebody's saying they're having problems with their internet, this is the first place that I like to go to see what's going on out there. So you saw that ping. We talked about that as a definition, how long it takes to hit the first server. This was a test done at my house last week. And, you're seeing a download of 67 and you're seeing an upload of 10. And, I know that I'm paying for 60 down. I'm not sure if I'm paying for 1 or 2 or 3. It should be a 3 and above, but I don't know if I'm always getting 3 or above. And I've tested that. My suggestion to you is you go to this website and do frequent testing, especially at peak times of the day, and you'll actually see that these numbers always fluctuate. The ups and downs always fluctuate. And if people are having trouble downloading files and their download speeds at 10, there's a problem. And if it's consistently at 10, then they're breaking the law, right? Or they're breaking, not the law, they're breaking rules, right? Average is supposed to be 25. So something that you can check out. And maybe, maybe there's a problem. Maybe somebody hit, hit a telephone pole or something and knocked your internet off, and that's why it's so slow. This is a great place to start and kind of figure out, what's out there. There's plenty of speed test companies out there, so I'm not being paid to support this one, but I find it pretty reliable for all the travels that I had. So let's get into the assessment of broadband here in the city of Fitchburg. First, looking at the federal FCC Broadband Map. And this is showing you a number of fixed residential broadband providers. So we've got the number of providers in the area. What's cool on this map is if you do go back in here, you can click into the different areas and see who are those providers and what they offer. So you can see what technology, it's showing you the technology here off to the right. If it's cable, fiber, fixed wireless, satellite, or other. And then at the bottom here, it's showing those download speeds. So most of these companies are, or those providers are definitely up in the, as far as speeds go, download speeds again, because that's the most important. Download is definitely used the most as far as data goes for most people, not everybody. Looking just a little bit closer here in the city of Fitchburg compared for that map, again, from the FCC standpoint, it's saying that we have pretty good coverage. Doesn't mean that specific areas, and we'll note that, get good internet based on the provider, based on the infrastructure in their home. There's a lot of what ifs that make or break internet. Maybe it's just not in your area too. That's definitely important. Definitely spent a lot of time with Roger and Randy on these next maps. These come from the PSC here in Wisconsin, and these ones are very important because they are the ones that also are in charge of the grant. So we want to keep up with this one as well, but I'm guessing they probably correspond with the FCC map here. So looking at Dane County, based on wireline download speed and wireline upload speed. Those are the two that I have checked here. So we're kind of getting an idea. If it's 25 megs, remember that's the minimal. Dane County's looking pretty darn good. Fitchburg, we're looking really good. And that's great. We cannot, we are definitely above average, I would suspect, compared to other places here. So that's good to see. A little bit closer look in here at Fitchburg. Now you're starting to see where we're having some tough areas. Even when I looked at this, and the first time I pulled the report was 2016. That sliver down there on Adams hasn't changed too much. They do have some access down there, but it's pretty limited. But as you're looking here, we're looking pretty darn good as far as Fitchburg goes. Just a closer look here. We know that they're along the Highway 14 corridor. There's some tough spots as well, but definitely on the Verona side of things, the west part of Fitchburg, that's a little bit slower than average, and you can see that represented in the light blue there. So, and I can tell you, we did some testing, and I wasn't able to get that map in there. We did some broadband testing with a mobile coverage, drove around the city. We were purchasing a piece of equipment that allows us to broadcast from different places. And we could tell you that that's the slow area down in that region in the mobile world as well. Sure, that will get better, but that's where Fitchburg's at on that area. So I assume we'll come back and talk about this area, but just to finish out here, talking about the providers here in the city of Fitchburg. As mentioned, these are the ones that I'm aware of. Fact TV, we broadcast out to AT&T, Spectrum, and TDS. So we know that they're here in the city, and we push our signal out to those cable providers. Frontier, we do not. They're down in the Oregon area. And then we have satellite and wireless companies here in the area. And this was a recent search here. If I wanted to buy internet here at the city of Fitchburg, right here in City Hall, I could pay $49 a month, $49.99 for 100 down. That's pretty darn good in this location. And you can see HughesNet, that's a satellite provider. They're offering 25 megs down at 59. Not a good deal there. Provider-wise, internet access in the Fitchburg, a different website. Oh, I'm sorry, this is still from the Broadband Now. Back to their assessment of what's in here. They're saying that there's 19 internet providers in the Fitchburg, with 9 of those offering residential service. I'm sure those have to do with wireless companies. There are sub-companies of sub-companies that are out there. I'm focusing on just a couple, and the ones that are tracked that I saw from the PSC, although I so assume PSC is tracking them all. Just comparison speeds for each of those providers in the area. According to this AT&T internet, their speed's at 1,000 megabytes per second. It's a DSL or it's a fiber, mostly fiber in Fitchburg. And TDS, you got Comcast. I'm not sure who Comcast is affiliated with. Spectrum. You can see that there's this cable 940 megabytes, and I'm assuming on top, by the way, on AT&T's internet, that DSL probably wouldn't get to 1,000 megabytes. But Randy probably could confirm that for us as well. But something to keep in mind that, you know, for when you're out there buying, these are some of the numbers you want to look at when you're kind of making that decision against the price. So important. Here's just another review of what's out there and what those speeds look like and their coverage within the area. We're going to look at a map here that shows that. So according to the PSC, this is the coverage area of AT&T in Fitchburg. Covers a pretty extensive area. Randy said that there are a lot of infrastructure with fiber as far as the network goes with AT&T. And I'm sure it is. I have no, I can't break it off or break it down further of what is the infrastructure of that. I haven't found where that relies, but at least for your provider, that's them. Spectrum, they are hot in Fitchburg. They cover most of Fitchburg. You're starting to see some zones here, though, that are popping up. And again, down in that Adams Road or everything on the west, southwest area of Fitchburg, we definitely can see some areas there. And then along the 14 corridor as well, we know there's some trouble there with access. Here's TDS. TDS came into the area a couple of years ago, so they haven't been here long in some of the areas. They've made some big expansion out in Verona, and they're really big on their fiber and their download speed of being close to a gig. So which is really good. Gig is what we're looking for in the future. So that's TDS, and you can see TDS down in the Adams Road area. Again, I pick on that one because we know that that's a dead end site. They're on one side of the road in that specific area, and I don't know if they'll expand. It's all about demand for the companies. If they really want to expand, they are going to want people to buy into that. Here's Frontier coming out of Oregon. They're covering some of that Highway 14 area. So where one is dead area, if you look at Charter and then you move forward, you see Frontier covers, a different area. So, and again, Frontier's internet speeds aren't as fast as those other providers. So that can be troublesome. Satellite companies. We didn't look at this when we were talking with Roger, but I did want to throw this in that satellite companies say that they have total coverage in the area. I'm suspecting that there are certain dead zones, just like anywhere else. But hey, they cover all of Fitchburg, so looking good. Here are the top 2 companies when it comes to satellite providers. And don't worry, Scott, I'll bring up your favorite provider in just a minute. And you can see their speeds are slow. We can see that they are definitely slow, and you're gonna have to pay if you want to play when it comes to the satellite providers. Although that technology is changing with a new company, and we'll talk about it in just a little bit. Here are 2 wireless companies. Again, there are so many wireless companies. For your sake, in my sanity, I just put down the 2 top ones that I know of, and US Cellular and Verizon. The map, PSC does offer maps showing all the providers in the area. So you're looking at AT&T, US Cellular, and Verizon, and they're advertised, and they're saying that they have pretty good coverage in Fitchburg. I do see some dots closer to Verona and in some of the areas. Again, this is open to interpretation because I know for Verizon's sake that there are a lot of dead zones in Fitchburg. So we know that that coverage is there, just might be spotty in certain areas. That's a lot of info. As far as the broadband grant goes, this grant period has already passed. So the data that I will be showing you is this year's winners or where the money is going coming up here. But the purpose of the grant, well, there it is. As the expansion of grant program is to encourage the development and advance of telecommunication capabilities, the underserved areas of the state. There's a whole how to go through this Q&A section in this. I encourage you to go through it. For your time, I'm just gonna keep moving along here. Just quickly looking at the state and what is and isn't available based on the broadband expansion grant eligibility. So I've selected that here. This is showing you what is served and underserved. Served is gray, underserved is the light blue, and unserved is the darker grays on this map. So again, when you look at Dane County, you can tell why we're over 95% covered, and maybe why it's going to be harder for Dane County to get these grants, because there's a lot of areas that need some help big time throughout. Closer look here at Dane County with that expansion grant. You can see that there are some areas in Fitchburg that would qualify in the grant, and that's along the 14 corridor and again down in the Adams Road area of the city. So we know that we are eligible in some areas, and it's just partnering with that company to make that move forward. Just one closer look here, so you can kind of see again where the eligibility was when they first opened up for 2021. So this is looking at 2021, and you know, obviously if you had shades of blue in your area, you could definitely go for the grant. So something that you would want to check each year if you're going to try for the grant. Just one more look here, zoomed in a little bit closer to see, kind of get some detail on where those areas are. Here is a look at the winners of 2020, and you can kind of see that Dane County didn't get any. They were way to the north, some to the south, but you know, that's kind of where they picked. And those flags, by the way, represent the different types of internet. So it's interesting to me that some areas are getting DSL internet for the first time, and in Dane County, and that's being eliminated, you know, day by day with fiber and other things. So it kind of paints a picture that, you know, when we're talking about underserved areas, there's still areas that are probably getting internet for the first time via some type of wire, if they didn't already have it before. So kind of interesting, but at least again, see what happened here. My understanding of the grant though is, you know, you gotta have you're gonna want the cable or the provider, you know, to partner up with you to do that infrastructure. So they might be already interested in a specific area, not even related to what we want. You know, I think the sum up there is they're only going to put this stuff in if there's interest and there's money to be made for that company, right? That's really what it comes down to, because they're not bound by anybody to have to put in anything. So unless they're going to make money off of, you know, lots of people being in an area, it's going to be hard for them to even bring internet to certain areas. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Future of broadband, it's a loaded subject. Here's what we have out there. The picture kind of represents it as it is today. It's hard to say. There are so many articles and opinions on all of this, so I'm just going to say the sky's the limit, literally. Internet speeds are rising. We know that. You know, obviously the average speed someday will be re-looked at, and it won't be 25 down and 3 up. You know, it should be getting closer to 1 gig or 1,000 megabytes up, right? or down, excuse me, not up. We get to 1,000 up someday, would be worth crying for. That'll be amazing out there. You know, according to this article, 80% of U.S. homes have access to 1 gig of internet. Remember, that's probably down. And yeah, it's getting better and better day by day. And, you know, you're hearing a lot of talk about the 5G, which is being rolled out. You can see that on your cell phones out there. And that's where the question starts to come into mind here. What's going to be faster? What's in the ground or what's in the wireless networks? And that's going to kind of, I think, drive this conversation with you guys is, you know, is it, you know, the companies are fighting each other right now, being like, you know, AT&T or I'm sorry, AT&T is a bad example. Spectrum might say that, you know, their infrastructure in the ground is what powers the towers. So the towers that are spilling out the 5G speeds, you know, people are able to get that, use that. So it's kind of an interesting thing. You know, they're already talking about 10G because, you know, that's how this works. So who knows if that will happen in 10 years or 20 years or 2 years, hard to say, right? But I think the question for you guys is, you know, 5G as it rolls out and they put more towers and they have the freedom to put the towers in a lot of areas and on telephone poles. You've heard all of those stories. That definitely is a thing to keep in mind. So maybe the companies will continue to dig lines in the ground, but at some point, will 5G be faster than what's in the ground? I can't tell you that answer. That will play out as we go along. Last but not least, throwing this in because my staff are just head over heels for Elon. Is it Elon Musk? Yeah, something like that. And the SpaceX Starlink satellite internet service. This is a beta testing piece. It has to do with satellite internet. But you know, when we were looking at those speeds before, you're seeing the average speeds at 50 to 150 megabytes. So that's beating out some of the cable companies' download. And certainly the 5G is still kicking their butt, but for people who don't have access to fast internet, this might be a thing. Something you can check into, but it's one of those futuristic looks ahead, if you will. So with that, that is the information I have. It's a daunting task to look at internet because there's so much information out there, but that's how I would sum it up.
Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate your time in putting this together. Is this available on Fitchburg's website if people want to look at it? I found a lot of information in there that I thought was helpful to me, just trying to, as a layperson, to understand this.
Yeah, I can make it available. I did add one more slide today. I'd sent it out to Wade and Roger and Randy, but I will make it available to the committee, and we can see if we can get it up on the website.
Great, thank you.
Jeremy, I have some questions or some comments and some questions. Appreciate the time and the work that you put into this, or that all three of you put into this. I wish I had known you were working on this because I spent 31 years in the telecommunications industry, and a lot of the area I know very well. When Jones Internet first came to the city of Fitchburg, they were required by the city to cable the uncabled areas, and had they survived, that area would now all be covered. The rural area, basically south of Lacey Road, has no internet service. My neighbor built a brand new house, and from his back deck you can see the Capitol. It's a beautiful view. Charter, he got a quote from Charter, a bid of $125,000 to extend the cable a quarter mile to his house. When we talk about the AT&T coverage and the Frontier coverage, most of that is on existing telephone cable, which is 24 and 26 gauge wire. And if you know anything about that, how that works, 24 and 26 wire, that gauge wire basically had a hard time running telephone, let alone anything else. And you can chuckle all you want, but that's a fact, because when AT&T tried to sell me service at the house I live in now, They said, oh, we can make that work. And I said, I know the people who put that cable in, they put it in the wrong size. One of them's still alive, the other one's dead. But it was done poorly in 1966, and it hasn't gotten any better. So to think that the rural area is going to get anything at all, everybody is kidding themselves. And to say that Fitchburg has good service, well, yeah, it does, and your presentation is great, sir, but it's mainly meant for subdivisions, and you speak of subdivisions and subdivisions and subdivisions, but you don't speak of the rural area where there aren't any subdivisions. And you got to understand that, unless we make them, or unless we get somebody with a big checkbook to come in, nobody's going to provide service to the rural areas. And we as a city put stuff up there on the web for everybody to look at. Well, the people in the rural area don't have that opportunity. And we have to make sure that's our job as a committee to try to do whatever we can to try to get service out to them and just to present a presentation where everything's rosy. Well, it's not rosy in the rural area.
So Mark,
Yeah, and I
go
I
ahead.
apologize if that's the way it came off. That definitely was not the way it was supposed to be. It was only what is out there and available based on what is out there for information. So by no means was I tasked with finding what's. It would take more research to find out what is out in the areas you're talking about specifically, and working with that. That I think would be the next chapter, or an area we could look at. But this is what's out there, I would say, is what this presentation is. So I apologize if it came off that way. That was not the intention.
I appreciate that. It certainly did come off that way. And the speed in the rural area, just for your information, is 0 when you have no service.
So Mark, from your experience, the phone lines are never, what you're saying is, as laid currently in certain areas, they're never going to be part of the solution for the rural areas. It's going to have to be the cell towers or satellite or something else.
It will have to be something else because the existing cable is like I say, some of it was placed in the 60s. And I some of it I placed, some of it
I can
I
comment
don't.
on that if,
Please go ahead.
yeah. What you're speaking of is plain old telephone service.
Yep.
There is no such thing as plain old telephone service anymore. You know, I know you put a lot of years in at AT&T, but when I left in 2018, they were fiber. We were placing no copper. As you know, the underground exists. There's lots of copper, F1, sitting under the underground, still sitting there. And you are correct about new subdivisions. It's an AT&T territory, and a marketeer goes out and markets along with cable TV, TDS, or whoever the provider is, and whoever wins that award provides fiber. All that uptown area, all brand new, fiber to all of those homes. Now, with TA 26, Telecommunications Act with the state of Wisconsin, maybe it was passed 10 years ago, it's all unregulated. You can cross boundaries, but there has to be a reason for them to cross boundaries. Reason being, how do we make money? And I guess that's what we're here to find out, is how much of the rural area has a provider. And Roger, you can help me with this. At least the maps we looked at with Jeremy that he obtained from the Public Service Commission, and I dispute the accuracy, not on Jeremy's part, but what was provided to Jeremy as to what the providers are. It looks as if Fitchburg is covered with some type of provider of broadband, and I'm not quite sure about that, and that's when I began to question, is that Spectrum? And are they providing an internet service? But what you're referencing, Mark, is copper, and nothing's being provided over copper anymore. It would be fiber, so.
Randy, I beg to differ with you some because AT&T tried to sell me from the end.
DSL.
From the end of the fiber, they tried to sell, and it would have to go through the existing copper network. which was placed in 1966 to get to my home. So for me to buy it through AT&T was, I mean, it was quite humorous to me. The person that was trying to sell it had no knowledge at all. So my provider is Charter, Spectrum, whatever they are called this week. Anyway, and I'm the end of the line. I'm the last person on the line on Sain Road. Anybody south can get nothing other than satellite. Amy can speak to that. Satellite at her location, which is further south from me, is not pretty much poor, if non-existent. There is nothing else. I have offered to give AT&T several times access for a spot on our farm to backfeed the area, so they could put a hub in there. And AT&T has verbally and in writing said they weren't interested.
Because there was no,
If I was
demand
said,
wasn't
if
there for them to-
everyone in our area
you're right, George.
was willing to sign up, that there would not be enough revenue for them to even consider it if I gave them the site for it.
I understand. But what we're looking at, if there is no service, maybe this is the opportunity, the grants that are being provided, as long as there is a provider that will build it out for you.
I understand that.
Yeah.
And I support that 100%.
Yeah.
We just need to make sure that when we do a presentation that you're presenting to the Ag and Rural Committee,
I fully understand that.
not the Urban Committee.
I understand that. We're just basing the information that was given from us from the Public Service Commission. And we have never, Roger and I had this conversation with Jeremy, that we're not completely sure that that's accurate. And that's why we're bringing it before this committee to have that conversation. And if that is the case, let's go for a grant and let's build it out.
100%, agree.
Jeremy?
I would comment too that to say there's no internet in the rural area would be a false term across the area, because we tested it with a mobile broadband. Doesn't mean that it's the most cost effective, and I think those are things that are important. What Randy just said is important, but there is access south of Lacey Road. I tested it with broadband internet. It happened. It's there. It's just whether people knew that existed, and I think there should be more investigation. Mark makes great points, and again, this wasn't to paint a rosy picture. It was to show what's out there, and the rural area definitely needs, I think we identified that several times, that especially south of Lacey, looking at all the maps that I looked at, needed the help in there. So I think some of the reports said it. Now, maybe I didn't specify how, speed-wise, but, we weren't tasked with that. But I do want to make it clear that we know that I have a map sitting here that we drove every single, roads down there with broadband, specifically for a project we were working on for transmitting signal back to City Hall here. And that is access via cellular. And again, that's kind of the next generation to look at too, moving forward in the future.
When you want to test that again, go into the Country Vineyards neighborhood off of Fish Hatchery Road. Test it there. Because cell phones don't even work.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned that, Jeremy, in your presentation, that there are big pockets where cellular service lacks.
Absolutely. And like I said, we tested with Verizon Wireless and a broadband internet connection just to see where those drops were, and that map's in my office if anybody ever wants to see it. I'd be happy to go out and we have that technology in our hands. Again, it doesn't mean that at a specific day, at a specific time, it's guaranteed, fast internet. And I think that's important. And I think that's what we're hearing from those specific areas.
Roger?
I think we need to focus on, where we go from here with the information that we've heard today. Without a doubt, Mark, I'd have to say yes. The reason that we've even brought this up to this committee is because there is a lack of sufficient internet service in the area. I will have to say the maps that we have seen shows that it is there. The question is the speed. We've got people that are talking about not being able to get it out fast enough, and as a consequence, they're having to go to satellites and all of that, and it's become a real problem, especially if you look at a situation if somebody wants to sell their home in the rural area, and the first thing that they have, somebody's going to ask, well, what's your internet capability? This is the crutch of where the question has to be answered. You know, what is their capability? Right now, we know it's very, very slow. So what do we do about that, or is there anything we can do about it? Well, the one thing I'm hearing here is that the demand is driven by a developer. The developer, he can go in there and say, okay, I'm going to develop, well, take Terra Vesta, for example. That's a prime example. It's in the middle of a huge development right now. I see that they could go to Charter or to AT&T or any of these and say, hey, I want you to come in here. They're going to jump and say yes. And the reason is economics. They're paid by the number of customers that they can get in a concentrated area. Well, if you take that as a scenario, what is happening in the rural area? Unfortunately, and Jeremy did lead to this, our customer base is very scattered and not something that they are interested in to be able to make any money on. There lies the problem. Okay. In Vernon County, they had this problem. What they do, they tied up with two different ways of approaching this. They went to private people or private organizations to side in economically plus with state to a provider and say, hey, we now have money to help subsidize our lack of customers for you. This turned out to be very, very successful up there. I'm not sure what we would fall into it, but what I'm pointing out is there is a way to subsidize the lack of the economics that the provider is looking at. Now, the governor has said that he's going to put money into this. Well, last year, he proposed $78 million for projects like to subsidize what we're talking about. He ended up with only getting 42. This year, already in December, and Jeremy mentioned in December is the deadline for getting grants put in place. There's, I think you said 124, 126 grants. Those grants equal over $62 million. So there's money out there. If we are ever going to go and try to improve what you're saying, Mark, where we don't have anything, we've got to decide whether or not we can be creative. Because quite frankly, I unfortunately do not see that we have a customer base in the rural area to draw the attention of a provider. So that's where I think we're at right now in my mind. And I'm certainly open to anything else that anybody would want to say along that line.
So listening to you, Roger, would that mean trying to connect with internet provider companies as to what our future urban development is going to be, and then presenting that in combination with, the rural areas that might, like we have corridors in Fitchburg, like across from me, the railroad corridor that is set up for future utilities. You have another rail line over on Sain, and then you have Highway 14. And I don't know if any of it would help to talk to Oregon or adjacent areas. if they're interested in
It
working.
it comes down to the numbers of customers,
Right.
you know.
And I don't know
And-
how
and
you can predict that, but if there's a way to present that in order to lobby for a grant?
Yeah, I don't know whether if I were a provider and somebody came to me with that, oh, okay, this is fine. How many years is I going to have to subsidize this before you can start paying me?
Right.
And so, again, I would have to say that not knowing how they think anything, except it would make me believe that they're going to want a pretty solid plan in place with a pretty good turnover. And I think, Randy, you'd probably be able to understand what I'm saying there on that.
Sure, it's a take rate.
Yeah, this is our unfortunate dilemma for the rural landowners.
Roger, I agree with you, and I support that 100%, but I think we're looking at it way wrong. We as a city, and if you go back to the first cable provider that was here, and what then the township did at that point in time, mandated, the cable commission that was created by the township, did at that point in time, is mandated that they put in so many feet of cable into the rural areas, knowing full well that there was not the customer base there to support it. Okay? And Randy, you correct me if I'm wrong, because in all the years that I've done this telecommunications type of work, the majority of your cost is the placement, is the labor, and the material to place the product into the ground. That is the majority of your costs. So if the city gets a grant and places X amount of miles of cable, and then whichever provider is available to provide that service on the city-owned infrastructure, is how we have to look at this. Otherwise, you throw up your arms because the rural area is just never going to get anything because until you you ruin the rural area and fill it all with houses.
Right.
Yeah,
That's the problem. I mean, we want to preserve the rural landscape and the ag land, so, but just to get the infrastructure there is gonna be the dilemma
Well,
without
Well,
development, you know?
I guess the question would be then, Mark, does this committee or does the city need to look into what it takes to get a grant?
Yes,
If I heard you correctly, a grant is the trigger.
right.
I would agree,
Okay, so,
100%. But the grant then allows the city to bid, to go out to Randy's company,
oh, sure.
to go out to Amy's company.
We have to have a provider that wants to work with us. It's a
And that-
stakeholder.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a bid. Randy, you've been with a telephone company, you understand that. Telephone company bid X amount of miles of cable.
Right,
And
right.
it was a bid. You had to be a credible.
I know all about bids, but
Bidder.
I think that one of our first steps is we have to provide a provider who wants to work with us so that we can fill out an application to be awarded the money that's going to be approved by the Public Service Commission or whoever's approving the grants.
So just to get a little clarity, so in order for us to fill out an application and apply for this telecommunication grant, we have to already have an established provider that says, if you give us the money, we will go ahead and provide this service to these customers.
Now, that's my understanding, but I think we need to have somebody that understands the grant process to work with us. We're just drawing some assumptions here.
I believe in the rural areas, what you're finding is that the municipalities are providing are getting the grants to provide the service. Yes, and then it may be whoever, you're right, we need more clarity on that, but you are not going to ever get an AT&T or a Charter to show any interest in servicing the southern area of this city. The city has to step forward and want to provide that service.
What do you mean by the city? You and I, you know as well as I, they have to have a switch. And so AT&T would have that switch, and if they were given the money, these are all assumptions, They're working with somebody out there, and that's my next question to Jeremy, if he knows who that partner is with all of those rural area that's providing fiber now. I mean, somebody has to provide a path back to a switch, may it be Spectrum, AT&T, TDS, because you can't just, as you know, you cannot just place facility and it magically happens.
I understand 100%. I agree with you 100%. It's, what I'm saying is they're not interested in putting in a penny into an area that they can't instantly make money. They're not interested at all. There's where the city.
That's where the grant comes into play.
Well, there's where the city falls in.
City.
The city can be part of the grant application.
100%. And that's
Okay.
what I'm trying to say. We had that, the city, the township, through the cable commission, at the time it was created, had that, everybody would have been served by this time. And that's the concept we have to go back to.
Now, you're talking about regulation, because you were required to place X number of copper in those days, correct? Is that what you're saying, to individual homes?
There was already copper there, Randy. That was when the broadband was first coming out. It was Jones Internet. It was, they're providing, and it was probably coaxial at that point in time. But they were required by the contract with the city, each year they would place so many miles.
Okay, I just know what it is today.
Yeah, well, that's
Agree-
part of the trouble. We need to have some history of what we had, and some of the ideas may have been old, but they weren't totally antiquated.
I understand, but I know what was before us now. Roger, help me. We have a process that the governor has provided. It's a resource, it's a toolbox, however you want to look at it, to build out into a rural area of fiber. If we have a partner to get it back to a switch, build it out to provide that internet service.
100%. Agree with you 100%.
Okay, well then I'm not sure where you and I are off.
I think that's a game plan.
Yeah,
And I think that's what we're trying to maybe start here today, is a game plan. And if that, Randy, I think you're right on. I think maybe, and this would be up to everybody thinking about this, but we pick one of these and say, hey, we're thinking about going for a grant next year. Now, you won't be able to do this till December next year, but we're thinking about going to a grant. Will you support this? Now we get a yes. Now we move forward.
Well, and I
and
think-
whether we move forward with the city or with private individuals or ever how, but we've got a game plan.
and that game plan should include, I think, the Mike Zimmerman, the Economic
Oh, yeah.
Development Group, and so they work through that
Sure.
process, and they have that resource to reach out to these providers, AT&T, Spectrum, TDS, and
Sure.
so forth, yeah.
I think we ought to
No, I 100% agree with you. But,
back to the committee.
So, then I'll bring up Jeremy here, but I just want to ask, there are no grants anywhere in Dane County. Jeremy showed us that before. So that doesn't mean that there never will be. But we have to figure out what is the likelihood that we're actually going to be able to get one, considering that there were none granted in Dane County. Now, maybe they're not applied for. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm going to interrupt you. You're right. Maybe nobody applied. Let's hope that that's the case, and not the fact that where he had all the flags on the state map is areas that did not have any type of broadband. I mean, that might be an issue, but if we do nothing, we'll never find out.
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to ask.
Do you know the answer to that, Jeremy?
I don't. I would have to look up who applied, who didn't. I know in the past Dane County has gotten, specific areas have gotten it. I would note, and I can't quote me on this, but I believe when we did look at this a while back, and especially in the area of Highway M to Highway 18, that southwest corner, we were talking with TDS, and I believe Mike and Joyce reached out to them, and they did not have interest in even doing the grant. So I think that was years ago, of course, but just to throw that out there, that, you know, we kind of stopped when that we couldn't move forward with a company that was down in that area. I would also note that, you know, if you move forward with doing the grant and stuff, I think you also got to figure out, you know, how do you decide what is served and not served in the rural area? You know, none of the maps that I have here, you know, down to the street level, down to the address, you know, how do you decide in the city who gets it, where that line's going to go, like who's priority? I don't know how you figure all that out. I don't know how that was done in the past, but maybe something that Mark would know. And I still think you really got to think about the 5G technology as well. I realize you know, we know wired is better than wireless, but I do think that should be on your mind as well. And if you know, if you're going to check into these things, you know, I would spend some time looking at that. I know that doesn't have a grant attached to it, but, you know, I would be interested to know more about that technology. I only scratched the surface on that area.
So for the 5G to work, you only need to have sufficient number of cell towers for the coverage. Is that correct or not? So that's a wireless solution to the problem we're talking about.
Yes.
Is that the more realistic solution to this than trying to get grants to lay wire?
And that's what I'm saying. I don't know. You know, I would definitely say, you know, when you're doing it, there's more research to be had here. There is no question about that in the direction you go. But I think those side notes I just stated, I think are important in decision making, that you decide, you know, how to meet the rural area, you know, with the technology. Because I also throwing out, you know, just because areas have internet coverage too, in our northern part of the city, you know, it might not be affordable internet access. So, you know, you would be opening a lot of other questions too, because that's also an area that we've talked about, that not everybody can afford internet either. I know this is the ag and rural area, but, you know, if you're looking at it as a whole city, I think there's a lot to discuss here and a lot to unpack.
There certainly is.
Turn it back to the committee.
Do you want to,
Yeah, turn it.
you and Randy, you want to
I will follow up on it.
follow up on this? Okay.
Oh, yes.
I got, you know, I had one other question. This kind of goes back to what Mark was saying, and I remember too, when I didn't remember the name of the cable company, but I remember there was a cable company that the agreement was they come into Fitchburg, eventually they're going to cover all of Fitchburg.
They had to lay so many.
They reneged or went broke or whatever they did.
They were sold out to the next provider, the next company that bought them out.
It was Charter, wasn't it?
I'm not sure on that. So
Okay.
anyway, but the company who came in after them said they wouldn't provide any service at all with that clause.
Right, right. So I guess my question is it possible when we're opening up a new neighborhood like Terra Vista, where there's going to be a lot of homes, to say, all right, look, you know, AT&T, Spectrum, whoever you are, you want to come in here? That's fine. You can come in here, but you also got to lay 2 miles out in the rural area.
Can
you do that?
I suspect you're stepping on some FCC rules and regulations.
Okay.
I'd be very surprised that you
Yep.
could put those kinds
But I
of
would love to
conditions
have you guys take a look at that too in the committee, because that's basically what the deal was
Yes.
with this other cable company years ago.
on. And you just have to remember, a lot of those regulations are no longer there. I mean, the whole industry has been deregulated from what Mark is describing.
Yeah.
I 100% agree, Randy.
Yeah.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. And the cell, maybe that's the way we need more work on it.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'll go back to what AT&T, when I offered them a site and I offered them the opportunity to have my company place the aerial cable to that site for free.
Yeah, Mark, you know, AT&T's never allowed anybody but themselves to play, or a subcontractor approved to provide their own facility.
I am a subcontractor, Randy.
Were you approved with AT&T then?
At that point in time, I was.
Okay, all right.
And they were not interested. Period.
Probably didn't cost out then, I'm guessing. There
You're
must have been
correct.
some reason, yeah.
You're
All right,
correct.
well, let's turn this back to the committee. Raj and Randy, thank you for the work. Jeremy, thank you very much for the presentation. Thanks also for putting it up on the city's website, because again, I think anyone who's listening out there in the rural area and is interested, the slideshow I thought was really informative and really helpful. And if they can find that on the city's website, I think that people would learn a lot looking through that. So let's take this back up. Roger or Randy, let Wade or me know when you're kind of ready to go again, when you want to put it back on the agenda.
Okay,
And we'll follow up again. Okay?
Okay.
very good.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeremy. All right, moving on to item 5A, which is agricultural accessory related uses in city agricultural zoning districts. I think we have one person who'd like to speak on this, Jeff, and then I'm going to turn it over to Wade for a staff report.
Yep, 60
ahead, Jeff.
seconds. Jeff Schleicher, hello everyone again, longtime Fitchburg resident, but currently town of Middleton. I was able to take a look at what Wade put together here with regard to changes 2 and 7. And I think it is some good material here. It creates at least the possibility for such a venue to open without opening Pandora's box to the entire area. The conditions are strict, but yet they're beneficial and they help protect the city and the rural area. It would require a major commitment by anybody requesting such a permit, but it's nothing less than what I would have expected and even agree with. So my 2 cents is I think this is, if you truly believe that a potential wedding venue is something that's potentially good for the city, this at least is a pathway to get there that I think could work. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Jeff. Wade, do you want to kind of lead the discussion on this, and do you want to kind of, how do you want to do this? Do you want to go through the whole thing first, or do you want to go through different areas and discuss
I think
them?
what I'll do, yeah, we've been through this a couple of times now, so I think what I'll probably do, and if the committee's agreeable, is just touch on, kind of give a rehash of last meeting, like a 30-second rehash, and then kind of speak to the 2 changes that I've created since that last meeting. And then I could cover all that in like 5 or 10 minutes, and then certainly the committee can discuss. Does that sound good?
Yep, thanks.
Okay. So folks should be seeing my screen. Is that right?
Yes.
Actually, I think, hold on, I have the wrong memo up there. Bear with me.
We see Mary Ann now.
Yep. All right, so again, so I'm on page, I guess 7 of the packet. Folks, again, have this on their laptops if they want to follow along, but essentially kind of where we're at. Again, I believe this is the 3rd or 4th meeting we've discussed these changes. Hopefully tonight we can come to some closure. But basically 7 changes being proposed to our ag districts, 5 of which were approved recommended for approval at the last meeting. So basically 2 changes here tonight that I want to talk in more detail about. So I'm on the bottom of page 7. What I did is, this is change number 2. Again, one change that was not discussed previously. So the committee's direction at the last meeting was essentially to separate the idea of a rural event venue from ag entertainment. So initially we had talked about grouping that under the ag entertainment definition and modifying that definition. So we're moving away from that. So I did create a whole separate definition of what I'm calling a rural event venue. And I think it's a short definition, so I'll just quickly read it. An existing or new farm building or a building of a similar rustic architectural style and surrounding grounds requiring a rural location and located outside the city's urban service area that hosts organized meetings and or social gatherings, including but not limited to weddings, parties, and corporate events. So again, the idea there is to really create a pretty airtight definition specific to, this idea of a rural event venue. So, so this is change number 2. And maybe what I'll do is just talk about change number 7 And then we, again, can come back and pick these apart. So again, changes 3 through 6 were approved, recommended for approval last time. So change 7, and I'm on the, I guess, the midpoint of page 8 of the packet. So this is where we get into this idea of identifying that rural event venue, that use under our ag districts. So actually in the zoning ordinance, where are we going to put that use and how are we going to regulate it? So what I'm proposing is an addition of a rural event venue use to a one ag district, our ag small district, our AS district. And I'm proposing basically a laundry list of regulations that are applicable to that use. So essentially what we're saying is it's a conditional use only in our ag small district. And the conditions of that use are identified in A through, looks like O, basically covering 2 pages. And I don't think I want to read through all the changes, but maybe just I'll quickly touch on them. And then again, if you want to pick at them, we can do so. Got a request to zoom in here, so I will do that. Okay, so again, laundry list of conditions that would be required for a rural event use. First one being a maximum lot size, and I can get into why we came up with that lot size if folks are interested. Letter B is talking about this buffer. So essentially creating a nice rural aesthetic that maintains that rural character on these rural event venue sites. C just adds more detail about what that buffer should look like. Letter D, again, a lot of these are just kind of standard public safety elements, but we wanted to make clear that they're required. Unobstructed frontage along a public road for access. E is talking about traffic, minimizing disturbances via traffic or parking, those sorts of things. F is talking again about minimizing traffic hazards. G speaks to parking, giving the Plan Commission some level of discretion in terms of gravel or paved. Obviously, we want sufficient parking, to meet the needs of the facility. Certainly, we would allow overflow parking, with some standards, handicap spots, those sorts of things. Then moving into H, we don't want the parking areas in that buffer that I spoke to earlier. Letter I, pretty much some standard ideas related to signage and lighting, for the venue site. J, just talking about fire code, no big surprises there. K, just talking about other uses that may sometimes accompany these rural event uses that we want to restrict. So just some clarifications on that. Letter L, talking about sound. So basically, if folks do want to have sound at these venues, we would require a separate special permit. We have some existing city licensing requirements that we could use for that as well. Alcoholic beverages, obviously, we would require some licensing, based on the extent of alcohol being served. We do outline some size parameters for that space as well. And then I'm on letter N. Again, I think here we're really calling out accessory uses that we would have no problem with, accompanying the rural event as the main use. Letter O just talks about if and when a person applies for a permit to do a rural event venue, these are the things we need to see in that permit, that application. So again, just, floor plans, lighting, signage plans, hours of operation, ingress, egress, parking, all those sorts of things. And then even more detail, number of events per year, attendee capacity, employee numbers, again, sound, any temporary structures, tents, those sorts of things. And then I do want to point out, we are talking about a deed restriction, basically saying that if and when we issue a permit for that use shall remain a rural event use, or if that use ever goes away, it shall essentially revert back to another permitted or conditional use in the AS district. So we don't want to see a rural event venue last for 10 years and then the demand for that stops and then it becomes like a auto repair shop or something like that, just to use an example. So we want to keep those uses consistent with the AS district. And then 11 and 12 are just, kind of some formalities in terms of insurance and other documentation that could potentially be required by our zoning administrator. So again, a new definition of a rural event venue, and then essentially a laundry list of conditions to allow that use, again, as a conditional use in our ag small district. So with that, that's kind of the gist of it, so I can certainly take any questions or comments the commission might have.
Thanks, Wade. Anyone with any specific comments on this? Mark?
Question about B. What was the idea of the 200-foot?
Yep.
Our water, correct me if I'm wrong, but like the footage is 500 on a water issue, for a buffer.
Yeah, so again, whenever I do this kind of stuff, I look at what other folks have done that have a similar dynamic to Fitchburg. So this language came from a village over in Kenosha County, I think a former township that incorporated as a village, so kind of a similar dynamic to us. This was a buffer they had in their code. That is a good point. I did want to bring that up to this body for maybe a discussion point. I don't know if 200 is right for Fitchburg. I could see maybe a lesser buffer. I don't think we need to increase that buffer. Really, it's about an aesthetic. It's not about in my opinion, stormwater management. It's really about more kind of creating that visual, as you drive by the site, you're not just seeing the venue and then just flat, mowed grass that really doesn't fit in with that rural landscape. So I guess you could say that the 200 foot is somewhat arbitrary, but, I think we need to think about a buffer that, is reasonable and also matches what we have on the ground in our city, meaning, if we have an existing barn that's maybe close to a property line, less than 200 feet, would this condition prohibit a conversion of an existing barn, to a rural event venue because of this buffer width? So just some thoughts for consideration.
Can you apply for a conditional use on a conditional use? If,
Yeah, good. As I was mentioning that, I was thinking about that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would think if we come up with conditions, we would want to stick to those. I mean, that would be my gut instinct.
Well, maybe we should just say that in the event of new construction,
Sure.
so that it wouldn't preclude use in an existing building, which would essentially be grandfathered in for the potential use wherever it is.
And then maybe something to the effect of 200 would be required for existing with the exception if it couldn't be met given current property lines, something like that. I mean, is that, you see what I'm getting at there?
Yeah, I would say that was going to be my question too, is that it should be a flexible due to the circumstances of the lot size and location. I don't know how you do that, but 200 feet seems like it would be quite a large buffer for a real small, 3-4 acre.
Maybe
Yes.
if it couldn't be met, maybe a waiver could be applied.
Yeah, something to, I don't know how you.
Because we do that in the zoning districts now. Correct me if I'm wrong, Wade.
I guess, yep, we do. I guess I would, just food for thought, to Ed's point, if we're talking is existing, essentially creating a new lot to accommodate this, I think having a set standard makes sense. Like 100 foot or 200 foot, whatever it might be. If we're talking about conversion of an existing facility, then I think you could have some wiggle room because you may have existing lot lines that don't allow for that 100 foot or 200 foot buffer.
So you could put it,
consideration.
You could put in some language just to provide for a waiver in the event it's the use of an existing building. So it still is going to get looked at. It's still a conditional use. The city can still say no because you may have an existing farm building that's very close to a couple of houses. And you don't want to have that. So you say no.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
I have a quick question for you, Wade. So if we have like a 500-foot existing buffer on like new properties that are happening, I'm curious to know why we would bring up 200 if 500 is already the standard for something new.
Yeah, could you click, what's the 500 buffer? I'm not clear on what that is.
In the wetland.
For any development in a wetland.
Yeah, so, okay, good.
500
Good clarification.
500-foot
So I think
buffer.
what Mark's speaking to is, and I think it might even be 300 feet, Mark, maybe.
I think it's a 300-foot wetland buffer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
Basically, what we're saying is anytime you're developing close to a wetland, which obviously are sensitive environmental lands, we require a 300-foot buffer. So that's really about more of maintaining the ecological integrity of a wetland with that buffer. You know, I would say this is much more of a visual aesthetic, more of a superficial aesthetic, to be honest, to maintain that rural character. And again, if we go bigger, I think we are probably precluding opportunities for, you know, maybe some opportunities for this to happen on smaller lots.
To clarify, this isn't meant to supersede the 300-foot wetland buffer. That's still
That's a whole nother issue.
applicable. If there's a
Yeah, no,
wetland there, you still
these
got
are-
300 feet.
Yeah, these are really different things. Again, this is really just about essentially creating a landscape buffer, just something that looks nice around the property.
Anything else? I had a couple of things. Rod, you need to leave?
Yeah, I'm afraid I've got to go.
We'll still have quorum, so you may be excused.
Okay.
Otherwise, I wouldn't excuse you.
I will say this, this venue, I think is right on. And I think it gives us everything that we can work with. And I would certainly hope that we put this into play. And without a doubt, I've said it before, I think it's certainly this type of a thing for Fitchburg can give a real economic impact to the city. So if it came to a vote, I would vote yes.
Thanks, Raj.
Yeah.
Got a couple of things, Wade. On the bottom of page 7, under agricultural entertainment, we do note that the intent is that it's accessory to a principal agricultural use.
Yep.
I expected to also see that in the rural event venue, but I don't see that in there.
Well, no, okay. So again, what we're doing here, Ed, is this is a completely stand on its own use. So that was what I understood to be the direction of the committee is it's not, a rural event is not under ag entertainment anymore. It's a completely separate use on its own. So there, to be honest, the only connections we're making to agriculture with this type of use is architecture, the style, and that buffer. Other than that, it's a standalone commercial type use.
I guess I want to ask the rest of the committee if that's what they expected, because I still thought that this was going to be something that would be accessory to an agricultural use.
I'm with you, Ed. I'm thinking the same thing. It needs to be, that was our agreement. It was an accessory to a primary agriculture use across the board.
Yep. George?
yeah, we did discuss length. We wanted to keep it ag-related throughout.
Yep. Randy?
Yes, I'm in agreement as well.
Mark?
That was the conversation.
Yeah, understanding when we do that, and that goes, Roger's gone, but it goes back to where he's talking about, that could then prevent a wedding venue
Yes, it could. If it isn't,
tied in.
yeah, if it isn't accessory to an agricultural use. it
Exactly,
could.
just so we're clear on
Yep.
that.
And we don't want it out there in the rural area if its primary function is in agriculture. I mean, we discussed at length, we want to see cropland, like what's the point? In blacktopping our prime agricultural land to put one of these up. I have no interest in that.
Scott, what
I
was your
guess I completely misunderstood the committee then. So my apologies. I thought we were pretty clear last time, but my apologies. So I guess I don't know where that leaves us. Yeah, I guess I don't know.
I think it would be it would be very similar to agricultural entertainment, just that it would be accessory to an agricultural. I think we're fine with everything else here, right? Other than we do want this to be accessory to an agricultural use. Just insert the same language that we had in the rest of ag.
But I think a point of clarification here is, let's say somebody creates a 10-acre rural event venue, okay? And I'm assuming that this will be a new lot created with someone like Jeff, who's not a farmer, okay? So if 4 acres of that site are a rural event venue, and he's making X amount of money from that, and 6 acres of that site, to the committee's point, are in agriculture, which even though he has agriculture on that site, that is not the rural event venue is not accessory to agriculture. Agriculture is accessory to the rural event venue.
Right.
See what I mean?
And I don't know that I really foresaw that we were going to be creating new small lots for this purpose in the rural area.
You know, and I don't think we want to see 100 of these wedding barns popping up everywhere. So I think as a committee, you know, on behalf of the agricultural land in the city of Fitchburg, I think it's our due diligence to kind of prevent this little tiny pop-up of 10-acre wedding barns everywhere, you know. I think every situation is unique and different, and if you don't have, you know, 50 acres of farmland to put a small little barn on it to host weddings, and the main 40 acres are still being ag, I mean, we're not interested in it.
So just backing up, we as we discussed previously, we cannot do this use in our agriculture exclusive district. It's not allowed per state statute. So most places that do this, they zone these things commercial, because that's what they are. Years ago, as a city, we decided we're not going to zone commercial areas in our ag districts. We got rid of that district. It's a dead district. So again, I just don't quite know. I feel like, yeah, I guess I need some direction, I guess, in terms of what's the desire here.
So you're saying this can't be done in AX?
Not, it can be done. So where we started this 4 months ago was me proposing as an ag entertainment use, accessory to agriculture. Jeff's proposal is not accessory to, Jeff's proposal would not be allowed as an accessory ag entertainment use. So, yeah, I guess I'm just not clear on where we go, I guess.
Well, because in that case, it's not accessory.
Correct.
I understand that. But what I'm asking is, this cannot be done in AX?
No. It can be done if it's meets the ag entertainment definition, as we've discussed. But my understanding from the committee last time was that a proposal like Jeff, or my interpretation was a proposal like Jeff's would not meet this definition, and therefore a separate definition is needed.
Well, in order for it to meet the application, Mr. Schleicher would have to first create a farm.
No, he'd have to create a 10-acre a 10-acre less ag small lot.
Yes.
Under what I'm proposing for you today.
If his parcel, which is however many acres it is, was an active farm that he started tomorrow, or once the snow melted, and then he came in with a venue to add that to it. Would that not fit?
Again, if you want to go under the I mean, again, if first of all, the definition of a farm, there's a definition of that. And if we want this to be accessory, we need to really think about when is a farm a primary use and when is it an accessory use. Again, I'll use the example, if Jeff had 15 acres, he's renting out 10 of it, whatever he makes per acre on that, 5 of it's for a rural event venue. He's probably making more on the rural event venue than he is on renting out the farm acreage. I would say that the primary use is a rural event venue, which is not ag.
Okay. And so if it were not the intent of this committee to create new small lots for the purpose of this type of facility, and it were the intent that a facility like this would be allowed accessory to an ag use on an actual operating farm, can that be done, or are you saying that under state statute or something that can't be done under AX?
Yeah, that's what I proposed last time, and the committee didn't like that, didn't want to go that route. So so that's essentially this first definition here, that's essentially, what that is. But again, there needs to be a direct connection between, hold on here, let me zoom out.
So as long as there's a direct connection, you can do this under AX, but we need to build it into the ag entertainment section, I guess. I mean, obviously, I think we're all on the same page, and somehow we're not with you. So how do we get back on the same page here?
I don't know, to be honest. So I guess just tell me what you want me to do.
I think what we want is for this to be a conditional use on an operating farm, if that can legally be done. And the assumption is if it's an operating farm, by and large, it's probably going to be AX zoning. So if you're saying that you cannot legally have a wedding barn in AX zoning, then you're telling us that we can't actually do what we were thinking of.
Again, Jeff's proposal is not a wedding barn. Jeff's proposal is a rural event venue.
Well, I don't want to get into a specific proposal or a request at this meeting. What we're trying to determine is what the city is going to allow in general, not in specific.
So if we're
Jeff's
talking about
proposal
a
is not on
traditional
the
wedding
agenda.
barn, yeah, if we're talking about a traditional, again, I would just defer to this definition right in front of you, ag entertainment. If a proposal, a rural event proposal meets this definition,
Yes.
I mean, it's pretty cut and dry.
I think that's the line that we're thinking.
Okay, so there are,
It's AS?
I would, what's that?
Does it matter at all if it's AS zoning?
Well,
I mean-
again, kind
I
of
mean,
reeling here a
it's-
little bit. Let me think about where we talked about this, ag entertainment. Okay, so yeah, we do allow it in AS. We do allow that. And we would allow it in AX and AT. Again, I just want to be very clear, there's a strict definition of what ag entertainment is. It would preclude certain other wedding, rural event venues that are happening in the area that have been talked about at this committee. They would not be allowed under this, because It would not be accessory to principal agricultural use. And it would not be essentially meet the definition of agriculture.
So, you know, I think we've all seen wedding barns, and some of them are only used for that purpose, and some of them are also used for agricultural purposes. And I think we're okay with that. I think there's a wedding barn on the O'Brien farm down on Glenway that's also used as an agricultural barn. And I think that there are other locations like that where you have an operating farm and someone wants to use the barn for these purposes. Now, obviously, there's a lot of investment that goes into that to get it up to code that would be necessary. But is the concern that you're raising, Wade, that if you put that much into it, that it becomes the primary use and no longer the accessory use?
Yes. And I think what's also important here to point out is the definition of a farm. So again, if someone created a 10-acre lot for this type of use, you know, I guess if they rent out 6 acres of cropland on that parcel, I guess that is considered a farm. But again, is that the primary use?
Let me ask a question. Is Apple Garden considered a farm?
So Apple Garden is basically it's a non-conforming use under our AX. I think we do consider it. Apple Orchard is a form of agriculture, but you know, all the facilities and the store, that was essentially non-conforming. But we are allowing that, you know, with these changes. But again, I think there, when you've got, I don't know how many acres Apple Garden is, to me, that's pretty.
About 80,
80?
pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's pretty cut and dry, that the production, you know, is the primary activity out there, and the selling is a secondary accessory use.
But in that case, the selling is primarily of the product that they're producing on site.
Correct.
So to me, that is what we are looking, I think, to encourage.
Right.
And I think Apple Garden is the primary example of something that we look at and think, why on earth is you know, this a non-conforming use? This should be not only allowed but encouraged. Mm-hmm. But they're selling their own produce there. It's not like they put up a convenience store.
And but they're also.
Maybe if I could just clarify one thing. So kind of what I'm hearing is, so potentially striking the new definition of rural event venue, and then defaulting back to the ag entertainment use or definition, and then still maintaining, hold on here, still maintaining a laundry list of conditions. Is that, I mean, I guess just maybe a stop and check here of kind of where we're at with the desire of moving forward.
So in other words, packaging it under ag entertainment, but for that specific type of use, because of the number of people that it brings at one time, it would also have these other conditions, A through O, that would have to be met for it to be approved as a conditional use.
Again, you know, whatever the committee would like, I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of kind of where we're going with this.
Okay, I'm gonna stop talking and let someone else talk, because that's what I would like, yeah.
I'd agree with you. That I mean, Apple Garden has had other functions. They've had barn dances, correct me if I'm wrong, George, but they've had barn dances.
yeah.
They've had live music, they've had all kinds of things there, along with the apple production. And that's, you know, we had a fall festival there several years when Laverne was still alive.
Adams Road, where they had bands and gypsy swing
Yeah,
once a year,
exactly.
big event,
So,
But it
I
was a
mean,
horse farm,
yeah, it was, so, I mean.
in an old barn.
I mean, there are things we can do And maybe this is something that we're gonna have to defer it because of the time and,
Oh, yeah.
and bring it back.
Yeah,
I think it just comes down to the wording in it to get it either conditioned under AS or something, I don't know, but it seems like it can be done, for sure.
so maybe just,
Should be.
again, just kind of back it up here. So people like the definition of ag entertainment. Is that, do I get consensus there?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Okay, so what I'm thinking is maybe what we do is add in the example, so where it says examples of ag entertainment,
yeah,
Yes,
so I would maybe propose to add the word rural event venue.
yes.
Okay.
And then also, incorporate by notation somehow, because, I mean, you put a lot of work into these conditions, and I think they're important. I think we
They're
want them
good.
to be there, A through O, that if that's what it's going to be, that these conditions apply.
Again, I whatever the committee wants to do is fine by me. I don't, work is work and I get paid regardless. So if I misunderstood again, I apologize. If these conditions aren't desired, given what we're rethinking here, that I'm fine with that too. I just want to be clear again, so we can come to closure on this, what the committee wants. Okay, so just maybe one step at a time. So adding in rural event area as an example of ag entertainment. And then I would probably say, keeping the definition of rural event venue. I don't see any harm in keeping that.
Right?
Okay. And then, so we're good there. And then I guess the last question would be, is the committee want to stick with these? I guess would be considered, a conditional use. So rural event venue maybe gets called out as a conditional use
Yep.
under ag entertainment with these conditions.
Yes, I think that that's what we're after. And the only quick thing that I would add to that would be item I, site lighting. I'd like to add that all fixtures have to be dark sky compliant and turned off when the facility is not in use. What we don't want is a bunch of light pollution in the agricultural area. I understand there's gonna be a bunch of lights on when there's an event going on. The rest of the time, those lights should be off and they should all be cut off fixtures.
Okay.
really good point.
Yeah, McGraw Park was a classic example of that. Now the trees have gotten big enough, but for years, whenever the ball teams are playing, it lit all the way up down to your house.
Yeah, we can still see it.
I think that flexibility we talked about on the 200-foot buffer, I think depends upon each individual case. And it could affect parking on a small lot if you can't use part of a buffer, if you have a large event once a year or something. But it just seems like but I think it is a good thing to have a standard to start with, for sure.
Yeah.
Otherwise, who knows?
There be,
Yeah.
you can create a waiver
Yeah,
based on the circumstances.
yeah. And we don't want hundreds of these things.
Right. Okay. Sure.
I would just, I think where you're going, fine, wherever you want to go, but I think the question Wade was still trying to raise was, how do we define accessory to principal ag business? And I still think you're going to have that point of confusion. Is it acres used for this versus acres used for ag? Is it revenue-based? What is it? And I think that's where there's still going to be a point of confusion from a consumer here, trying to figure out whether they qualify or not. So,
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff.
yeah.
Take on that would be, and I have this idea in my head of 10 acres delegated to the venue, and then a large majority of that portion there then delegated to the use of agriculture. So I wouldn't want to see a 10-acre piece of agriculture land and 9 acres is delegated to the venue. Oh, we got an acre of hayfield and here it counts. That's not where we want to go with this thing.
Right.
We want the primary use to be
Ag.
agriculture based on size, in my opinion. Prices with the agriculture, having one wedding a year is gonna generate more income than my whole hay crop. So I don't think looking at price is necessarily how we wanna shake at this thing. I think it's gonna be size according to each individual parcel.
So it's going to be based on acreage rather than based on revenue?
I think so.
Okay.
And we can certainly explore that. I guess I would just qualify, we do, define accessory and primary, and I'm not the zoning administrator, so I don't know how we define that, but there are, we need to be careful about just creating ways to interpret things based on, one use. We need to be consistent across the board in terms of what's primary and what's accessory, so.
Can you get back to us on that, Wade, at the next meeting?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so maybe it sounds like we might need another crack at this.
Unfortunately, I think so.
Yeah, at least one.
All right.
Okay, so we're not going to take any action on this item. I don't know if we were anyhow today, but I think probably a motion to table.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are out of time for our final discussion item, which was going to be purchase of development rights. So we'll move that also to an agenda of a later meeting. So I guess a motion to table that would be in order as well.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Wade, any staff report?
I don't think so. We're good.
Okay, any announcements?
I guess maybe if we want to set a next meeting.
I guess we probably want to do it in March then, huh? So we can keep moving on this? Do we have anything else coming up on either the March or potentially April agendas?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay,
But March works for staff, if that works for committee.
okay. Let's do the third Tuesday in March at 4 o'clock,
16th?
March 16th. As long as it's not on St. Patrick's Day,
Exactly.
Well, what's up with that?
We're Irish.
says the Dutchman.
Well, that's when the pandemics really hit us, so
That's right.
maybe that would, maybe we'll unhit it at that time.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Found it.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion adjourned. Thank you.